I'm Vince Devall, and welcome back to the Eagles Best Podcast. Here with my partner in crime.
I'm Brewer, of course.
Yeah, he's the one that's been doing real estate, reading contracts since before it was cool.
Yeah, it's been a long time. That's why I have receding hairline and grayish hair.
Yeah, that's why I wear a hat.
Exactly. All right, so yeah, it's not glamorous, but hey, those forms are where the magic happens. And today we're going to be talking about one of the most important and often misunderstood parts of buying and selling a home in Wisconsin, which is the boring term is the WB-11 residential offer to purchase, simply known as your offer to purchase.
All right, there we go. So that's the backbone of just about every real estate transaction in this state. But what most people don't realize, it's full of little details that can make or break a deal.
Exactly, Vince. So today we're going to really be diving into some of the obvious, but also some of the hidden details and showing where a good agent really earns their keep, because with the hidden details that are quite frankly in plain sight can like you said earlier, can really make a huge difference in the offer.
Yeah, so let's start off. One of the biggest things that every offer to purchase talks about is the price, right? But right after that, there's this thing called the earnest money.
Yeah, and that's often where buyers or even newer agents could stumble. Earnest money isn't just a deposit, it's part of how you show the seller that, hey, this is one of the ways I'm very serious about buying your home.
Right, right. And I had a buyer recently who wanted to offer $500 earnest money just under a $400,000 transaction for their home. Technically, it's allowed, but the seller saw it as a big red flag.
Yeah, and showing my age, I was quite common when I got into real estate that we would do $500 earnest money. Of course, the price points were often right around 200,000, which is still less. Typically, I'm kind of always been like around the 1%, but 3% is also very common. Again, it's all showing that strength, right? So on that home, what happened was we ended up putting down $5,000, delivering in 3 business days. Again, very common. There's 5 days, 3 business days, even 5 business days. Very common. The 3 business days, again, is showing that aggressiveness, that interest, and then going above 1% at the 5,000 helps you really get that acceptance. And again, letting not only the listing broker, but then their client know that, hey, we're ready to rock.
Right. Yeah. And the key there is also knowing what delivered means. Here in Wisconsin, you can have it hand delivered to whoever's holding it, title company, listing broker, selling broker. You can do it electronically through, a lot of times we use something called trust funds. It's a very secure website. Or it has to be postmarked by that third, in this case, third business day.
Yeah.
That's a detail that can, trip up a lot of experienced agents.
Yeah, that's where the seasoned agents really should step in, making sure wording and the timing to protect your earnest money, and just to show that overall good faith.
Yeah. Yep. Now, next up, the financing contingency. This is a big one. This is where the offer either builds confidence or scares the seller away. Really does.
Yeah. We'll write something typically like buyer to obtain a conventional loan, 80% loan to value, so not to exceed, for an example, 7.25% interest rate. With a commitment in 21 days, that's simply a commitment that your lender is going to say within 21 days, you are good to go, you are getting this loan.
Yep.
It sounds simple, but it tells also the seller that another way that we're very serious, and by the way, we are prepared.
Yeah. And it gives you the buyer protection, because if the rate shoots up or the lender changes terms on you, that you have an out. A good agent will balance those two sides. And let's jump into like that 80% loan to value. That just tells a seller that, okay, you have cash on hand to make this happen.
Correct.
It's when you're that 4%, they're like, okay, do they really have that much cash on hand to really make this a done deal?
Right. And also depends on the loan type too. I'll throw that in there.
Right.
Because we mentioned conventional, and there are conventional loans that are not less than 20% down. VA is a very solid loan. It's a great loan, obviously, for our veterans.
Yep.
And that's 100% loan.
Yeah.
So it's really comes into the looking at the interest rate, looking at the loan terms, and of course all the other contingencies and things we're going to be talking about today.
Right.
And When the appraisal comes in low too, that's when a skilled agent can really negotiate price adjustments and or what's called potentially, we have negotiated things called an appraisal gap.
Yeah.
Um,
Very risky for a buyer appraisal gaps, but depending
is.
on depending on how much we're off, it may not be that
Yeah,
bad.
that's getting into probably a detail of another whole
Right.
podcast.
Yeah, it's all about appraisals, things like
Yeah.
that. Now, let's hit the inspection contingency, where things often get very emotional, not just for buyers, but for sellers as
Yep.
well.
Uh, calling the drink there. Oh yeah. Yeah, buyers fall in love with the home. Then the inspection report comes back with 30 pages of issues. And what are some things you often see, Nance?
Hey, I mean, I tell buyers right from the start, prior to the inspection, I say, hey, an inspector has a job.
Yeah.
If they, didn't give you a 30-page report, they're not doing their job.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's simple things like you got a loose outlet, maybe just need a tiny screw, or there's a GFCI that's bad, or the gutter, your gutter should be running away from the house and not stopping right at the edge of the house.
Yeah.
Things like that. But some of the more serious items that we see on an inspection report: foundation, roof issues, water issues, maybe some leaky plumbing. So, an inspector gives you a broad range of things you want to look at. And they look at things like, you know, stuff to plan for in the future. So stuff that might need to be replaced in 5 to 10 years. Stuff that just is, day-to-day maintenance might need to be updated, screwing a light bulb, right? Or lastly, like major defects.
I think this is one area before we kind of go on to other details within the inspection contingency that you kind of said it too. Like this is where a really good agent and actually a really good inspector, because I tell especially new home buyers this all the time, first time home buyers. I've seen inspections make new construction look like the worst property in the world,
Right.
because of the wording of those inspections. The inspectors have a duty to call out anything they see, but then a really good agent, a really good inspector says, all right, well, this isn't that big a deal. I'm just telling you, like, this is what I see. This should be fine. Just kind of bringing the temperature down a little bit, especially, like I said, with those first time home buyers or their mother.
Or their dad that's owned a ton of homes and just is like, oh, and I'll tell you, right? They say inspectors are the jack of all trades, but the master of none. So their job is to kind of point out things that might be a major issue, but really maybe is not. So
don't be afraid to ask your inspector. By the way, there are inspectors out there that maybe before they became an inspector, they were an electrician, so they're super knowledgeable electrician, but they've got basic information about foundations, roofs, and things like that. So don't be afraid to ask them, well, do you have expertise in this? And many are good at saying, like, hey, I'm really confident in this, but they often know their reports seek, a
licensed professional,
a licensed expert's opinion on this.
Right.
Anyway, so once you've got that inspection done, now it's time to decide, all right, are we gonna try and get some things repaired? There's a lot of different options here. So one of the things you could do is deliver a notice of defects and or simply negotiate the repairs or a change in the terms, price, maybe with credit, things like that we'll talk about, just through an amendment to the offer to purchase. I will caution, less experienced newer agents have difficulty how a notice of defects is handled. It causes people to freak out. So if you can just go straight to doing an amendment, agreeing upon it during your contingency phase, I have no issues, and I oftentimes will try and just skip even bringing a notice of defects.
Yeah, it's not always
It
needed.
just seems like it freaks people out, and it's a scary term. But only, and you're only looking at those issues that are defined as defects by Wisconsin law. Again, good agents know what those are. That's kind of where our job gets a little bit more technical, where we could spend an entire podcast talking about different
100%.
defects and their levels, right?
Yeah. And a good agent will help you as a client understand what's legitimate defect and versus a maintenance issue, tightening a screw, changing a light bulb, and how to negotiate those repairs, credits, price reduction, whatever it might be, and not bring the emotion in it, right? That's the thing. Right from the start, we talked about inspections create emotion. So how do we bring the emotion out of it?
Maintenance, deferred maintenance, future maintenance, wear and tear. Those are common phrases like, hey, this isn't a defect. These are just things that were natural wear and tear that have not been taken care of.
Yep.
The fancy term, of course, like I said, was deferred maintenance. But once you save the deal, because instead of demanding repairs, like in this example used earlier, or we've had recently, is we just negotiated a $3,000 closing cost credit.
Right.
Buyer's like, hey, these are little things. They are defects. They should be some sort of compensation for it. But instead of asking the seller to go get an electrician or whatever it is, just do the $3,000 credit. Maybe that's what it's going to cost. Maybe it's slightly more, but everyone then can walk away happy.
Well, and I think too, that's where a agent has a conversation with their buyer. A lot of times I've helped buyers that are like, huh, my dad was an electrician. We can come in and, rewire these outlets, or we can put a GFI in. I'm not going to ask them to do that. Right. Or, yes, we need to fix the gutters.
Yeah.
I can do that. Let's see if we can get a credit to reduce my closing costs. It's a great way to jump into it. Now, with inspection comes some other testing, such as radon, water, mold, all that fun stuff that can be very, very scary and unknown.
Yeah. Let's get excited about that one. I mean, radon, nobody gets excited about radon until they see the number, right? I mean, that's just what it is. And
Yeah, that's right. And the WB11 allows for testing, but only if it's properly authorized in writing. So an agent will include something like buyer test for radon and water quality at buyer's expense with so many days. Now, I will tell you, radon in Wisconsin and in Illinois, it's paid for by the buyer. Water test in both Illinois and Wisconsin is typically water tests are typically paid for by the seller. Now, if you want to test for maybe water, like is your moisture on that wall? It looks like there's a water leak. That's a test that's going to have to be done by you as the buyer. So, yeah.
I'm going to add something that I was thinking about this morning, and I've had this. Yeah, I think sometimes I've had this happen several times where we didn't write the radon test in there because the buyer just says, well, I'll test for it, but if it's there, I'm not going to ask for it. But sometimes even putting that in writing, I've had buyers go back on that, or an experience where buyers go back on that, to really ensure the seller knows that you don't care. Just do it later, and you don't have to wait after closing, or after all your contingencies are cleared and your $5,000 earnest money's at risk. Then maybe say, hey, do you mind if we just go ahead and do this before we move in?
Right.
Something like that. But that will put the seller at ease. And again, those are things that you should think about, because going back to all the way to when you're offering, you're wanting throughout the whole process to maintain the seller's confidence that you are that buyer.
Right. Yeah, and it's all about being proactive. It's all about understanding and protecting your buyer before it becomes a problem.
Right. But again, if that's missing, the seller could legally deny the test later. So as I was giving that example, just make sure like you understand why the seller might be hesitant, and then think your solution beyond that.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So closing dates, occupancy, prorations, again, more really boring, fancy terms, right?
Yeah.
Things that are often looked at as simple. So the next part, these things really, at the end of the day, the timing really matters of all of these.
Yeah, exactly. Recently, we had a seller that just needed a couple days extra after closing to move out. The buyer was flexible, so we structured our offer with a rent back agreement with a daily rent amount and a refundable security deposit. Basically saying, hey, they're going to live in this house for a couple extra days after you buyer take ownership title, but that seller's going to pay you $100 a day to live here. And they're going to make sure that there's going to be a security deposit, because we want to make sure that when they're moving out, they don't put holes in the wall or accidentally take the dishwasher or the washer and dryer that was supposed to be left, right?
And in that example he gave, that's one of the things that helps keep deals alive, because it's a little give and take. You're doing something to help the seller out, and then you can always, things that are negotiable in that are, of course, when you said lease back, so is there actual rental income being earned back to the buyer, renting back to the seller? Or sometimes it's just little things, we adjust prorations for property taxes, HOA dues, other types of utilities and services and things like that the buyer can get delayed on assuming those costs.
Yeah.
So those are different things.
And I'll tell you, like with those properties, a good agent, like the title company typically, figures out the proration,
Yep.
but it's all done, they do it by man, they do it by hand. They go, okay, we're 250 days into the year,
Mhm.
we're dividing total by this. There's been times that the math's been wrong. So,
Yeah.
a good agent will check that and make sure that it's correct. Same thing I'll tell you when we talk about prorations and credits to a closing statement. Some municipalities have water bills that are done quarterly.
Mhm.
So, I recently had a client that was like, I didn't live here from September 1st to, you know, October 1st.
Mhm.
I purchased the place October 5th. Why am I paying September's water bill? Well, you got a credit on your titles in your closing statement. So a lot of people don't realize that how many math and timing details go into what looks like one simple little contract.
Yeah, and even going back to like I said, negotiations, all those things like closings, prorations, rent backs, all negotiable things that can happen. It'd be awesome if they could be calculated and negotiated right up front with the offer.
Right.
But sometimes these things definitely come in later, and it's good. Again, I know we keep mentioning good agents because, and maybe I just say experienced agent. Just many don't think about it because they don't have that experience to say, "Holy cow, there's these situations you run into."
Yep.
So, all right, inclusions and exclusions. Another one that's like, all right, well, that seems straightforward, but it's actually one of my favorite things, and it's actually one of the things that I've made a mistake at early in my career is
I love hearing this story.
confirming. Yeah, I'll tell the story. So it was actually the husband's fault, but I shared the blame with him. Uh, we included the washer and dryer. Turns out the husband, without even thinking, the washer and dryer was the last gift from her father before he had passed away. Husband not thinking that had sentimental value, included it. Wife didn't catch it on any of the paperwork, offers or anything. We get to we get the fact that they've moved these out of the house onto the truck. Buyer comes through their final walk said, "Hey, washer and dryer is included."
Yeah.
And we're like, "Oh, well, the husband and I split the costs of a new washer and dryer, which luckily at the time was about $1,000. So it cost me $500. I did it as a help the husband out. Frankly, because he was in a
Keep him out of the
he
doghouse.
was full in the doghouse, and of course he was appreciative of that, and he of course chipped in half. But those so pay attention to those things because,
Right.
and as the agent, my lesson I learned was I always confirm. Okay, these are the things we're including, right?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's a smart agent will walk the house with the client and clarify everything that's
Mhm.
included. Appliances, window treatments, TV mounts, heck, sometimes even like a play set or patio furniture. Sometimes it was wrote into the offer, it's included, but then come closing time, stuff's disappearing. So
And here's another thing that you definitely want to catch. This is with the inclusions, exclusions, home warranties. I ran into this. Just because it's advertised unless, for instance, it will provide a home warranty, if it's not written into the offer,
correct.
it's not included.
Yep.
That goes the same for inclusions and exclusions. The seller says, "Hey, we're going to leave that place at." Technically, as the buyer, if you didn't include it in your offer, you can actually have the seller or ask the seller to remove it from the property.
Right.
So those are super critically important things. You want to make sure that what you're getting included and what's also being excluded is what you want and that everybody's clear on it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everything's documented and there's no surprises that
Mhm.
walk through in the last day. Now, a lot of deals we start to customize them, right? With addendums and special provisions. So, that's a totally different part of the WB11 is when we add addendums, we add
Mhm.
provisions, things like that.
Yeah. So here's another example for the addendum B. For private wells and septic systems, or a special provision that says seller to professionally clean fireplace before closing. What does that mean? I don't know, right?
Yeah.
So and like what's defined as professional clean. So this is one thing I'll say especially when you're doing these, as I read that, is you need to define, be very specific on what professional clean is. That you're hiring an actual chimney cleaner, or is Uncle Tom coming over who's cleans his own chimney? Is that considered professional.
Right. Have it cleaned by a licensed professional, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So the trick is to keep the language clear and enforceable. Agents can't practice law, but we can use tested, compliant language that gets us results.
Well, that's the purpose of the entire contract is a legal document. So I hear agents say this all the time. Well, I can't give legal advice. Well, you're not giving legal advice. We have pre-drafted, contracts that were created by attorneys, and we're just making sure that they're compliant to that language. That's our job, and that's the difference between giving legal advice and not giving legal advice.
Right.
But like you said, that's experience. And those poorly worded special provisions, I've seen them blow deals.
Right. Yeah, 100%.
And that's a very, very uncomfortable on those little things that could have been addressed again. It's a very uncomfortable conversation later on.
Yeah, it really is. Now, deadlines. Deadlines are the heartbeat of the contract, right? These are the things that, if we don't hit them and we're not timely on them, we can lose earnest money.
Okay. Yeah. There's a key phrase in the offer that says time is of the essence. It's literally not a fancy phrase. It's legal reality. Miss a deadline and you could lose your contingency rights.
Yep.
So you hear, there's a lot of different examples, but just even the simplest of terms. So
yeah, and that's why we track everything from inspection due dates, the financing commitment, appraisals, closing. We even set reminders days ahead. And I will tell you, one of the biggest one we don't have control over, two of them, right, is financing and appraisal. We don't have a lot of control. Our lenders control a lot of that, but it's still your job as representing your client, your buyer, to work with the lender and be like, hey, our contingencies coming up. Where are we at? What are we doing? And then we potentially look at getting an extension, whatever that might look like.
So how do we do that? What are things we do to fix that? To make sure that we're on time?
What do we do? Oh, we track it.
Exactly.
We track it. We have systems in process that
Exactly.
we have people that help us track it, and they'll say, hey, 2 days out, payments, appraisal contingencies due on Wednesday. Where are we at? I then reach out to the lender and be like, hey, I know this was done 2 weeks ago. Do we have it yet?
We literally have a team that helps us keep track of that.
Oh, yeah.
Which is really good for us because we're like squirrels running around talking to everybody, all the clients, right? But it really makes a huge difference. So and then we make sure the delivery method is correct. So you can choose email, personal delivery. There's commercial delivery, which no one really uses. I think that's like the speedy deliveries and stuff like that. Because
I think that was before internet.
It was a lot of that was before internet. I haven't even because internet was around when I started. I'm not that old. I don't think I've ever used commercial or checked it. I question if it should even be on the offer, but obviously the attorneys have left it on it for a reason.
Yep.
So, but you do something in a proper way of delivery. If you don't do it the right way, a notice can not count.
Yeah. So it could kill the deal. Now, let's jump into title evidence and gap coverage. Not glamorous, but critical when it comes to the deal.
Yeah, the title commitment shows ownership and any liens or easements. We make sure the buyer gets gap coverage, which protects them from title issues that pop up between the commitment and the actual recording of the deed.
Yep.
So that's why you'll see on it, it's called a title commitment, but initially what you're ordering is a title insurance policy because the title companies are actually, it's an insurance policy because they can only go with what's on record. So that's where that gap coverage comes into play. Again, you're insured essentially to protect you.
Yeah, I mean, a good agent just doesn't hand off to title to get this done. We read it, we explain it, we make sure that the buyer actually understands what they're buying. And even from the seller standpoint, I mean, there's times that I look at a title commitment from the seller standpoint and I'm like, did you know that you owe child support? And they're like, what? Or did you know you have all this debt and it's a very common name? And we're like, whoa, this isn't Jeff Johnson. This is a different Jeff Johnson, right? So it's very important that we actually look through it and understand it.
We haven't I don't think we've had a title company on the podcast before.
No,
that's something we should do because there's a lot of things that the title companies do for us to make sure, because what you're supposed to be delivered is a clean deed to the property that has no liens on it other than, well, to start with, typically your mortgage that belongs to you only, not the previous owner. So you're getting a clean property.
Right.
So, all right. Negotiation strategy and offer presentation. Again, stuff that sounds sometimes a little bit easy. There's a million different strategies. So let's just bring this all together. How do great agents, good agents use all these details to make their clients offer them?
It's all about strategy. Maybe we offer a little above asking or a little bit below asking, but shorter inspection to 10 days. We tighten up financing to 21 days. We offer a flexible closing.
Yep.
There's a combination of ways you can beat an offer that's priced higher, right?
Yeah. We had one buyer that added a personal cover letter, approved for fair housing compliance, of course, but because that is a little thing that's, if they're not really liked anymore, but they're technically not illegal. It's up to the seller and the seller's agents to determine whether they're going to even look at it.
Present 'em.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
But that can bring an emotional connection. Now, I like to know if that matters to the seller, because some don't. Otherwise, I've always just tried to understand through their agent, what's important. I'll often call and say, all right, other than price, which obviously is going to be always important, what else is important to the seller from closing dates, the lease backs? I mean, there's a million things. So that's all part of the art of negotiating, in my opinion.
Yeah, the offer just isn't a number; it's a story. Like, and how are you going to? Good agent's going to know how to tell that story. They're going to have conversations with the listing agent. They're going to build that trust so that they know the listing agent knows, hey, I want to work with Brad or Vince or anybody else on the Eagle Homes team because they're having that conversation. They're going to tell a story.
Yeah. So, all right, overlooked details that agents can catch. So we'll wrap this one up with some quick hits. Just these little things that if you don't catch or you do catch, again, all we're trying to do is prevent headaches and things later that can quickly kill a deal.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as simple as well and septic tests that meet Department of Natural Resources rules and regulations, right? Lead-based paint disclosures, home warranty timing, make sure it's ordered. Sellers, sometimes you can get a home warranty, offer a home warranty that protects you during the listing process. HOA documents, digital signature, delivery requirements, things like that.
There's so many other little details that we can't even have time to get to
Oh my
today.
goodness, so true.
But again, this is where that solid agent knows what to look for.
Yeah, so when you see that stack of forms in an offer, remember, behind every line is a decision and protection and a strategy for you as that buyer.
Yeah. So the WB11, as the fancy term for it, it's literally not just paper. It's a blueprint. It's a good agent knows how to use it to protect you, guide you, and just make sure that overall the win on the home purchase and sale is a win for everybody.
Right. Yeah. So if you're buying or selling or anywhere in Wisconsin or Illinois and want a team that knows these details inside and out, reach out to us at the Eagle Homes team, brokered by Coldwell Banker Realty.
You can find us online, of course, at our Facebook page. Also search Eagle Homes team for that. And then check out our recording of this podcast will, of course, be out on YouTube.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week. We'll see you next week. Bye.